everyone, welcome to today's Book Nook. We're in the month of June, and I'm so excited to be sitting here with Elijah Menchaca to talk about his new book, They Split the Party, the sequel to They Met in the Tavern. Thank you so much for joining me today, Elijah.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. Always nice to talk.
Always nice to talk, and I'm so excited to dive into this one. Today, we're going to be talking all about heroes, villains, and splitting the narrative. But first, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, hey everybody, I'm Elijah Menchaca. I am the author of the Glintchasers series and a couple of other random projects I've spat out on the internet over the years. I was born in California and I've jumped all over the state since, chasing all sorts of dreams, including being an author.
Wonderful. So your book's about glint chasing and you are currently dream chasing.
Yep.
So if you've not read They Met in the Tavern, go do that because we're going to talk all about it. Check out our chat about it as well. I'll put the link down below. And then you can come back and you'll be all caught up. Otherwise, you can live dangerously and stick around for completely spoiler-filled content. You have been warned. So Elijah, could you please get us up to speed with the story so far?
Yeah, she's right. So the Glintchasers series follows the Starbreakers, who way back in their heyday when they were young were the premier adventurers in the kingdom until one day, on what should have just been another mission, everything went horribly wrong and an entire city died. And they all blamed each other for it and they broke up. Fast forward to years later, someone starts picking them off. Starts picking off other glint chasers, other freelancers, and they end up in the crosshairs. And so despite none of them really wanting to get together again and talk about anything, they have to join back up and stop people from trying to kill them. And then in the mess of that, they realize, okay, it's been a while and I don't actually want you dead. And so they're finding their footing again with each other as we go into this next book.
Yes, how true friendships form, not wanting each other dead. It's so exciting, sorry, to come back into this world, back into these characters, because in the first book, you just love them all. And the beautiful thing about it is a lot of them are actually kind of terrible people, but it doesn't seem to matter. You just want to see what they do and how they get out of all the scrapes they get themselves into. So since we've got the old gang back together, which character were you most eager to return to in the sequel?
It would probably be Angel, and I think it shows in how much of a spotlight she gets in this one, just because she felt the most like a bit of a Deus Ex Machina in the first book. It was just like everyone else was having problems, and then anytime Angel was there, the problem is now solved because she was strong enough to just punch it away. And so I felt like that. I mean, I love her so much, but in the first book, she feels more like that, and more you stay more on the surface with her, of just like she is angry at all of them and everything, and just wants to be left alone. And I really wanted to show that she's got more to it. She's got more layers to her than that. That there's more going on. She's got softer sides. She's got like things that actually make her smile and things she cares about. And it was really nice to be able to do that in this one.
Oh, fantastic. And actually, we were talking a little bit before I pressed record. I loved Angel, and the thing I loved about her most was that she hates how much she cares about her friends. It's so beautiful to watch her just be like reluctantly there for them, but she's got a huge heart. And I think you did a really good job in this one, really fleshing out her character, because she could have run the risk of just being like, oh, we have a problem, let's bring an Angel, and then the problem's over.
Yeah.
So who was your favorite new character that you introduce, or a side character who gets more airtime in the sequel?
Probably Ink. Ink was literally a plot device that I gave too much personality in the first one. And like in between having finished that one and like starting up this one, I just started thinking about like what's she been like? What's her, how did she get here? And then I invented like this whole backstory and like implications that her life had on like the whole world, and I gave her a tragic ex-boyfriend, And I was like, okay, I gotta use her more in the next one. She's too fun. So she got bumped up a bit and got to join in on some of the adventure.
Oh, amazing. And that makes so much sense because the sequel opens with Ink,
Mhm.
and she has such a distinctive voice. Like I think the last chapter, things go terribly wrong. I won't spoil even a second of this for readers, but things go terribly wrong. And the last line of the first chapter is like, well, that's going to be a problem. Like it's understatement of the year.
Yeah.
So you weave together quite a few heroes and villains and storylines really masterfully in this novel without it feeling too overwhelming or overcomplicated, or as a reader, you're never once like, wait, who's doing what? It all parses out quite beautifully. What are some tips that you have for any authors wanting to write a more complex narrative with those multiple points of view characters and multiple storylines?
Well, I think what worked for me was figuring out the maypole that everything is dancing around. And like for me, it was very simple because this book has a very central maypole of like the catastrophe that happens right at the start of the book that just spreads a mess across the whole kingdom. So everything that happens, even though it spreads out in different directions, is all still tied to that. And I think that advice honestly can be broadened out really well if you want like something that takes a little bit longer to come together, or if you want like a more complex, you just have to find that one central struggle or central point of tension and let everything orbit around that and involve that.
That makes sense. Yeah. And actually I just kind of made a connection. One of the big villains in this book is a puppeteer.
Mhm.
And so it really does feel like you say everyone's kind of orbiting, but then you've got also this kind of manipulative mastermind character who's pulling these strings of all these people who are kind of working in the same circles.
Yeah.
Very cool. So one of my favorite aspects of the novel is how you balance the character's Phoenix, who is, I always think of him as the main character. He's the leader
He
of,
was like definitely the closest one to the main character in the first book. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Whereas, I mean, a lot of them get more screen time in this one, but he still feels like the heart of the story,
Mhm.
our Phoenix. And his wife, Wings, who is a powerhouse. I love her so much. So you balance them quite beautifully, both in their power levels and in their importance to the plot. They each take turns being in awe of one another, which is really lovely because they are a married couple. And it's very refreshing to see that the leading lad, in my mind, obviously, there's a lot,
Mhm.
and the leading lass are partners rather than kind of a hero sidekick
Mhm.
dynamic. So, what was your inspiration behind these characters and their dynamic as you've moved them from where they were in the first book to where they are now in the sequel?
A big part of building Wings and Phoenix's dynamic was just looking at a lot of other couples in fiction, seeing like, okay, what makes good ones and what makes it feel, and like the big advice I got, like especially from like overtly sarcastic productions, was where I drew a lot of like how I wanted it, ideas and how I wanted to play tropes. And like there was just like it seemed you want like a balanced match. You want where they complement each other and where they both what I really wanted, I think that was the driving like principles in a good relationship that's not supposed to end in my stories. They both bring something to the table that the other, it's not just one person wants the other one's happy to be there. And like they both need each other at various points. And that was a lot of what I wanted to do. So like Wings is very empathetic and like gets people like that. And Phoenix is terrible at that. He is constantly like unsure of what people mean or what they say, unsure what he should say or whether or not any of his like thoughts are going in the right direction.
And I do love that he's self aware about that. Like, there's
Mhm.
a few times where he checks in with her because he trusts her ability to do what he has a hard time doing. It's
Yep.
like, should I feel differently about this, or did I react okay to that? I thought that was a really lovely little touch.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna build that into their history too. Just like when at some point he helped her figure out her power, then she had, it was real easy to tee up what her big like help in the initial setup of the wrestling was, because his whole company fell apart and he had no one, and she was like, okay, it's all right, come in out of the ring.
Oh, yeah, she was his umbrella.
Yeah.
I love that. And then on the flip side, with our villains, we get quite a rogue gallery of different baddies. Some of them have escaped from Oblivion, the big old big bad guy prison in your world, and some of them are at large and kind of getting larger. Some of them we thought were dead and they come on back. So all of them have quite unique character design and their own quirks. What was your favorite villain to design and write in this novel?
Favorite one to design and okay, my favorite one to write for, or when I guess write the fight for, was Rosso. He's sort of got the devil's speech power that I just like. If he says it, you gotta listen. It's very Purple Man, and I wanted to and he was the easy one to find someone to match him to. It's just like, okay, if this guy's whole thing is just tossing people out, using them like nothing, the obvious example is we match him with someone who cares so much about people, and so it was him versus. It had to be him versus Church. Other villains out there, I love Kyrion's whole gimmick, her whole thing of just being so extra. She was probably the most fun to just write scenes for and dialogue for.
Well, she's so theatrical. Like you can imagine, especially when they're on the, I'm trying not to give too much away. They're on the boat and all of the weapons are just suddenly everywhere. And you're like, ah!
Oh God, yeah. She's got such great imagery. And then like the final boss, unironically, was probably just born out of like one line of dialogue that I wanted someone to like throw at Angel just to shake her sense of identity and confidence a bit.
Oh, actually, is it too much of a spoiler to say the line?
I don't think so. It's the one that says like you did not descend from the heavens as a savior sentinel, you were cast from them in disgrace.
Yes, yeah. Because that's also her biggest insecurity too, is that why am I not up there when I don't fit in down here? Oh, I love that. What considerations do you take when pairing villains with your heroes? You already talked about the Devil's Tongue against Church. Rosso against Church, but what other considerations did you take?
Yeah, I guess what I try to always do is figure out, what does it mean that these two people are fighting? What emotions is that bringing to the surface? What is that reminding them of? And so like Phoenix, the villain that him and Wings go off to chase, was, I wanted something to necessitate Phoenix to grapple with how the world needs more than just him, and how like people need to be able to fend for themselves. They can't just always have a superhero descend to say when the monster shows up, and him grappling with, and so the villain that he chases is a big impetus for him to realize that. And then like I said, the villain that Angel fights is one to just get right up in her face about what she is really and what that means for her. And so it's always just trying to find, what can I pull out of the heroes by making them fight this person?
And actually, I remember reading that piece where Phoenix does realize that his job is not to just win the day, it's to equip those so that they can continue to win. And it was so cool because it really is that, what the old saying, teach a man to give a man a fish he eats
for a day, teach a man he'll eat. Yep.
Yeah, it was so great because we don't often see that. Especially in these superhero movies that are coming out, and a lot of these kind of adventure hero books that we'll read, it's always this adventure must save the day, and then the civilians are like, yay, we now have a festival in your honor, and we're going to worship you in some way every year, and it's wonderful. But it was so empowering to be like, oh, in one of these worlds I would probably be like a pleb. And look, he's empowering these plebs. That's really nice.
Yeah, yeah. One of the background themes of the Glintchasers series is really looking at like what is the most good that you can be doing? What's the best version of how your talents can be put to use? And is it this?
Yeah, well, and it really does have that element of, we always think that we are the main characters and we are the heroes, but one person's hero is another person's villain. And so how do we make sure that the heroes are heroes everywhere? It's like playing in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and there's always that level where it's like, well, we are gods and we can inflict our will on the people. You could become murder hobos, and that's bad. So how do we stop our adventurers becoming the murder hobos they fought against in the beginning?
Yeah, for sure.
So, what is your favorite quote or passage that you can share with us today?
All right. It's from part of Angel's arc, right towards the end, right when things are starting to fall apart. Uh, I had a lot of fun writing it, where someone else says to her, like, you don't have to fight that thing, and I won't think any less of you if you don't. And she, bullshit. I won't. I don't want you to. Like, you didn't have to do anything that you did. And you don't have to do this. And he says, but if I fight that thing, more people live than if I don't. And you probably die or come close and hate all of us for making you feel like you had to. Well, you don't, all right? You don't have to die for this town. You don't even have to fight for it. If you want to, you're not an angel. You're a fucking saint. And if you don't, you're a normal person who wants to live and be happy, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with whatever you do, and whatever you pick, I will still be here. So forget what you think you're supposed to do. Forget what anyone else thinks. What do you want?
Yeah. And you're going to have to read the book coming out June 27th to figure out what led them to that point and what she decides. So what projects are coming up next for you?
Well, Glintchasers book 3 is, I just wrapped up the first draft on that, and we're getting revisions done to that, get ready to submit. So hopefully it'll be out within a year and change. Outside of that, I'm looking to, once that's off my plate, I'll get back into the web serial that I was posting on my website, Outsiders of Kesh, which is a different series taking place just in a different corner of the same planet as Glintchasers, going through its own mess. And it's a lot more of like it's basically sort of like what I did instead of writing a Starbreakers prequel series, which is like, let's just follow some young people like being adventurers and trying to figure out who they are.
Oh, so it's not the same characters, obviously.
Not the same characters, same world, same basic premise of like bunch of people, but young group of people being like getting together, going on adventures, trying to find themselves, figure out who they are.
Oh, cool. And then that's really lovely because you probably get a lot of nice Easter eggs as to how the world works and all these different events that maybe cross borders.
I haven't crossed borders too much yet. That's for way down, because like I said, I basically put it in like the opposite corner of the world.
Nice. You don't have to mess with timelines then.
Yep. Yep. Like once I have like this series sorted out and like I know when everything, then I'll think about like, okay, now I can start weaving things together.
Very cool. And so where can we find you online for updates on the Glintchasers series and this new web series?
You can find me at Twitter at Phoenix Agent 003, but you can also just find me on my website at ElijahMenchaca.com. That's where everything I do ends up, usually first.
Perfect. Well, I will put all that information in the little description below. So everyone, please go check it out. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat about the next Glintchasers book. It was such a pleasure to read, and everyone else should go read it because it's just, you can tell it's been crafted by someone who cares about these characters, but also cares about a good story. It's just very well done. You should be so proud of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
I'm holding